Alright, hello and welcome. I'm McFluffin, and this is a build guide for my current favorite last Epoch build, the Explosive Vengeance Pally. Today I'm going to show you how to create the Explosive Vengeance Pally, how to play it. We'll talk about what's good about it, what makes it the build that I currently like the most, and hopefully you'll get a good understanding of what it can do and see whether or not something that you might want to try out in the future. Alright, so first, let's cover the strengths of this build. It's got very high survivability. I don't know of any other class, certainly that I've seen or played, that has higher survivability than this class. It can stand in literally a screen full of mobs as long as the modifiers aren't too high, and it will survive it, and it will kill them all, and it's pretty insane. It's also got excellent mobility, like kind of off the charts. It's going to be among the most mobile classes. It uses two different mobility skills. It uses Shield Rush and it uses Lunge, and it allows it to go throughout maps very, very quickly, stopping almost never unless it wants to. The cooldowns in both those are very short. As long as you pick up the right mana efficiency nodes, that you can use them pretty much on cooldown. It also has surprisingly good damage. You wouldn't expect a class that's built to be a tank like this one is to do so well on the damage, but it actually really does quite a bit of damage. It's not the most damaging, it's not the most powerful build, certainly, but it absolutely holds its own, even at the higher level content. So those are its biggest strengths. It's got a couple of weaknesses though. First off, it's got pretty limited range on its attacks. It's melee, and its melee range is pretty small. Although when the explosions go off, they go pretty far. So it actually can clear out pretty large groups of packs. But you have to continuously move in order to get yourself in position to take on any sort of ranged enemies or enemies that are not right next to you. So that can be a little bit of a downside. It's also somewhat gear dependent because it is very tanky. It needs to have the right stats in order to be able to stand in things and avoid getting one shot by high level mobs that have high DPS. So you do have to put some investment into the gear, but it's not crazy. It's not a huge amount, and almost everything it wears is actually crafted. So you don't have to worry about getting the right unique drop in order to use this build. You can use it from day one, even if you don't have any uniques, and it will perform very well. Alright, so let's talk about what actually makes this build work, what makes it go. Particularly the skills that are used in making this build so tanky, but also allowing it to do a lot of damage and be highly mobile. The first one is Vengeance. Vengeance really is the bread and butter of this build. It's where it started, what kind of caused it to evolve into what it is now. And for Vengeance to work, it has to be able to mitigate a ton of damage, which is what it's designed to do. And it starts off just already mitigating 30% of the damage that you'll take, as long as you've reposted or reposted within a short period of time. That will happen pretty much automatically as long as you're attacking something. So you don't even have to worry about that, just continue to hit. But to really get the most out of repost, you need to pick up Bolster. Bolster increases that 30% to basically 66% less damage, which is a massive amount. It's incredible. I don't think there's any other skill that comes even close to mitigating this much damage anywhere in its skill tree. So this is probably the highest damage mitigating ability in the game, and that's why we're using it for our tanky build. But it's still a pretty good damaging ability, although that's not actually where we're going to get most of our damage from, as you'll see here soon. But you got to pick up Bolster. The other necessary for this is Rapid Strikes. As we'll see, to get the maximum damage out of this, we need to be proccing our Holy Aura consistently. And to do that, we need to hit as quickly as possible. And so Rapid Strikes is really going to help us accomplish that. Now, as far as the rest of the points, you actually have some flexibility. I'm currently in Executioner, which increases the damage that Vengeance does by 90% against an enemy that's been hit. But you can definitely go into Dark Duelist. In fact, I'm strongly considering doing this myself, because that increases the global damage, which is going to really help this build with where it's getting its primary damage from, which is through that Holy Aura. And so it might actually be a better choice. So if you're considering making a new one of these, I would strongly consider going with some points in Dark Duelist. You only need 1 point in Executioner in order to get Bolster, so it really isn't a difficult decision to do so if that's what you want to do. Alright, next up is Lunge, which is one of our mobility skills, but that's not all it does. Now, you have a lot of flexibility with how you want to build this out. The only things that are necessary are Tactician to get that mana efficiency and the cooldown recovery. And you see here I've got 3 of 5. You can go to 5 of 5 if you want to. 3 of 5 seem to be perfectly sufficient for me. But also get Lunging Might, which increases your strength for 4 seconds after you complete a lunge, which significantly increases your damage. Every point of strength increases strength base skills by 4%. And so 8 is 32% more damage. Well, that's pretty powerful. This other stuff, that's good. It's nice. You can get some elemental protection. This Forge On is actually really solid. I would definitely recommend Forge On. Unstoppable is just a nice way of not getting hit when you're lunging, so that's a pretty good one too. And then I've got Overwhelm here, to just increase the damage of lunge. It's certainly not required, but it's just a nice little piece. But really, these two are the needs, and then I would suggest getting these, but otherwise everything else is pretty flexible. All right, this is the big one for the damage. Holy Aura allows you to do Flame Bursts, which proc after 6 melee attacks, and they do an absolute ton of damage, especially if you pick up Improved Flame Burst, which is also required for this build. You will be doing massive amounts of damage with Flame Burst, and that's why we are pushing attack speed to try to hit as quickly as possible so we can get off as many of these Flame Bursts as possible. The other thing that I strongly suggest to get, or things, are Fanaticism, which will increase your attack speed, which once again is going to allow you to do more Flame Bursts. This dexterity is nice, but we're really just pushing in to get 45% increased dodge chance. Dodge is going to be really powerful in this build as well because it can mitigate almost all damage if it procs, and it will proc a lot on this build. Alright, the last necessary skill to use this build is Shield Rush, and this one's got a ton of flexibility in how you want to build it. A lot of preference. The only thing that's really required is Rush Mastery to really get that mana efficiency down so you're not going a lot. As long as you pick that up, everything else is pretty much as you'd wish it to be. Less damage taken while Shield Rush is nice. I'd recommend that one, but not like a super strong recommendation. But I would recommend it. All this other stuff is really flavor. Extra damage is really what's doing on the Shield Rush. Shield Rush can actually do a decent amount of damage, and when you're leveling, it can be pretty strong. So if you want to do some more damage, this is probably the way to go. There's not a whole lot of damage mitigation options in Shield Rush, so that's why it's really flavor. The only thing you can't take in Shield Rush is desynchronous charge, because what it'll do is you'll Shield Rush and then you'll stop and then it'll put you back where you were, and that makes it a very poor choice for high mobility. And since we're going for high mobility, we don't want that. I've also got Volatile Reversal in here, and I've played around and tested with that. The problem with it is it's kind of broken right now. It doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. You don't always get your mana and health back the way you should. So I would recommend probably avoiding this for now, but in the future, if they fix this, it could be pretty strong for the build. Right now, it's just not working properly. So these 4 right here are really what you need. You just need the Vengeance, Lunge, Holy Aura, and Shield Rush. Okay, there is one other ability we're using, but it doesn't have a skill tree yet, and that's Sigils of Hope. And I'll show you at the end of this here how we weave that in there and what it's going to do. Alright, let's move on to the passive skill tree. So for the passive skill tree, there are a couple of things that you definitely want to get. First of all, you want just about any block chance node you can get. So like, for example, Unshakable, where you get plus 5% block chance. There's a bunch of these nodes, and you want to pick them up. There's only really one that you don't want to pick up, and that is Shield Wall, and that's because to get the extra block chance from it, you're going to lose a whole lot of dodge if you pick that up, and we don't want to do that because what we're doing here is we're really weaving the two together. You see I got 79% dodge rating and 64% block, and I can actually get my dodge rating higher. I get to 80% when I hit Holy Aura. That's a ton of dodge, and if we lost that, it just wouldn't work out in our favor to do so. But that's the only one. The rest of the block chance nodes, definitely pick those up. They're going to be really powerful for you. Another thing we want is the fire damage nodes. Just about every one. So like this one's obviously high on the tree, but Light of Rhea, 96% increased fire damage. The movement speed is really nice too for mobility. But pretty much all these, Rhea's strength, all these fire, they're almost all, I think they're all actually in the Paladin tree. But they're going to be huge for that flame burst. They're going to really scale well with it. The only one that we don't necessarily want is Righteous Firebrand, because I don't believe it procs with our fire burst, because I don't think that's considered a melee skill, even though it procs off of melee skills. Could be wrong on that. I haven't tested it myself, but my belief is that it doesn't work, so I haven't taken it. If it does, then maybe that would actually be really good to take, but as far as I can tell, it's not going to work. Okay, another interesting one that's new is Divine Bolt. When you hit with the melee attack, you have a 20% chance to cast Divine Bolt on a random nearby enemy. This didn't work until recently. They recently patched it and made it work. And it seems like our Flame Burst actually procs off of it, so we get way more Flame Bursts from using Divine Bolt. So right now, I'm suggesting picking that up. But more testing needs to be done. I've only used it a very short period of time, and it seemed that I was getting way more procs, so I think it's working. But if you find that it's actually not increasing your procs, then this is definitely not a necessary one. The damage it does itself is pretty minimal. The last thing that I would strongly suggest picking up, I mean, you can definitely go with what I'm going here. So I've got like 20 in the Sentinel, 10 in Void Knight, 8 in Forge Guard, and then the rest of the 59 in the Paladin. You can go exactly like I'm going, and you'll do well. But if you want to have some flexibility, these are the nodes I definitely strongly suggest taking. And the last one being in the Void Knight tree, Devouring Blade. 100% increased damage if you've killed an enemy in the past 4 seconds, and you will kill enemies quickly, lots of them. So this will be just about always on, and of course when it procs, you're just going to kill enemies even faster, so it'll just continue to proc off itself, and you'll maintain your 100% increased damage, pretty much 100% uptime, unless you're like on a boss by itself, but otherwise you'll have it up pretty much 100%. Okay, let's talk about gearing. So to make this build work at its best, which is taking very little damage, you're going to want to get to 100% Glancing Blow quickly. Glancing Blow is that weird stat that on first look is like, well, that's not very good, because what's it doing? It's decreasing your damage taken by 50% when it procs. And you're like, well, I could take dodge and block and just not take any damage. But Glancing Blow, you can get to 100% pretty easily. As you can see, I'm at 100%. It's the only one that's at 100% because it's the only one you really can get to 100%. So now on those few chances when I don't dodge or block an attack, I'll only take half the damage. So and you add that in with the 66% damage reduction that I'm going to get from my Vengeance, and it's minimal damage even when it goes through. So Glancing Blow really helps smooth out the damage that you actually do take and make it very, very manageable. Once you've gotten to 100% Glancing Blow, though, you can start focusing on some of the other stats that are going to be really powerful for this build. Those are in particular dodge, block, fire damage, melee attack speed, and void and necrotic protection. Void and necrotic are good because once you start to get to the higher level stuff, the most dangerous mobs are usually the void and necrotic mobs, especially in the Monolith of Fate, where the void enemies that they do like a blast ability that kind of shoots out at you. It's like a purple thing on the ground. When they do that thing and they do it like 4 at a time, it's considered a dot, and so it goes through most of your defenses, so you need to have that void protection to survive it. For necrotic, there's the birds that look like skeletons, and they do a necrotic ability that's like a aura around them. That can hit pretty hard too. Once you get really high, though, like the fire mages and some of the poison enemies can start to do a lot of damage. And so if you've got some space in your build, you can add some more fire and poison. You see here my fire is still pretty low. I'm able to pretty much run around and avoid a lot of the fire damage they kick out because they're ranged. But it'd be easier if I had more fire mitigation. My poison's alright. It's decent enough to where as long as I'm not standing and stuff for long periods of time, I'll survive it. The other option, or the other thing that's good for this build, is Wing Guards. These are not necessary, but that melee attack speed and that base dodge rating are really strong, and the haste is nice too. So you lose the ability to deal critical strikes, but as you've seen, this build is not in any way, shape, or form worried about critical strikes. They're nice, and if you do a Flame Blast with that crits, it's going to be a massive, massive number. but the damage is consistent enough to where critical strikes don't matter. If you get that additional attack speed, it's going to more than make up for it. And the dodge is nice too. So I definitely recommend these, but if you don't have them, don't worry about it. They're certainly not a requirement for the build. You can absolutely play without them, and you can even decide to build with a little more crit in there if you want to without these, and I think it'll still perform quite well. Okay, last thing we'll talk about, but certainly not least, is the rotation. How do you actually play the Explosive Vengeance Pally? And the rotation is actually fairly simple. First thing you want to do is make sure that you keep up 3 stacks of Sigil's Hope. The reason you want to do this is because when you have those up, you gain health regen and you gain added fire damage. And as we've talked about, fire damage is pretty strong. You can only have a maximum of 3, and you lose one after 20 seconds. So what I suggest doing is about once every 10 seconds, just hit the button after you've got your 3 up, and just keep hitting the button every 10 seconds, and you'll keep them up at 100% uptime. They're pretty easy to manage. The next big ability is your Holy Aura. So Holy Aura is always on you, but it has an active ability that increases the effects by 100%. When you hit this, you will do insane damage because it's going to really buff that flame burst. It's going to double that flame burst. So when you have a big pack, or when you have a tough enemy, hit your Holy Aura, and you're going to knock it down real fast. You're going to absolutely just erase it. If you're not in a position where you're getting really challenging enemies, then I would just hit it on cooldown just to really boost your DPS and get a nice, smooth, really powerful DPS flow. Next up is the lunge. So even when you're in fights where you don't want to leave, keeping lunge uptime up is really good because it's going to increase your strength, which is going to increase your damage across the board, basically. I think the uptime on that, let's see, is 4 seconds. Let me double check to make sure. Yep, add strength for 4 seconds after you complete the lunge. So basically every 4 seconds or so, you want to lunge to keep your 8 strength on there. Okay, now as far as your mobility goes, you want to shield rush open spaces to get through them really quickly, and then lunge into fights. That gets your strength up, and also just added mobility gets you right to where you want to go. Once you're in the fight, obviously keep up all your buffs like I just mentioned, and then keep your vengeance going constantly. Do not stop spamming vengeance. Basically just hold down right click, put on your right click and hold that down, because it's going to maintain your 66% decrease in damage taken buff that you definitely want on, because if that falls off, you're going to start to take damage really quickly. The best way to move around, if you're getting, let's say you're getting overwhelmed by a pack, or you're standing in some AoE that you need to get out of, is if lunge is off of cooldown, use lunge to resituate yourself, reorient towards some other area where the mobs are, and continuously use vengeance. But if that's on cooldown, then just shield rush your way out of there and then reorient yourself that way. That way you're pretty much basically holding down right click just about all the time. You don't have to try to walk around. You start walking around and your vengeance falls off, and now you're in trouble. You don't want to do that. But if you keep that up constantly, it's going to be really hard for you to die. This particular build, I haven't tested exactly how far it can go, say in the arena, but I think we did about 150 to 170 waves a week ago or so. No, actually, well, that's broken because this thing I did 290, but I did not do 290. It's currently got me listed as 12th on the leaderboard at 290. I think there's something wrong with the way that's displaying right now, but it's got me at 12th on the leaderboards for softcore waves. And we stopped that arena early because the stream was over. We could have gone longer, so I'm not sure how far this can actually push. Maybe this could push to number 1. I'm not sure, but this build is doing really well on the arena right now. So if you're looking for something that can push arenas, this is a good one, since you have a lot of room for error with its really high defense and just general damage mitigation. You're going to do really well in the arena with this one. And you're also going to do really well in the Monolith of Fate because it's got such great mobility. And because it's got that damage mitigation, you can basically, certainly in the lower levels of the pillar, or excuse me, the monolith, you can basically just shield rush your way and lunge your way all the way to wherever the event is, wherever the thing is you've got to be at, and then just set up shop, let everything come to you, and just kill it all as it comes to you, and just really speed your way through the monoliths with this build. It's going to do really well in both endgame systems right now. So that's basically it. That's the Explosive Vengeance Pally. I love the build. I've had a ton of fun with it. It's just a really enjoyable build. It's not quite as flashy as some of the other builds, even some of the ones that I've made, but I still love it. It just performs incredibly well. I hope you have a great time with the build. I hope you're having a great time in Last Epoch. I know I certainly am. Looking forward to seeing what they're going to do in the future. But enjoy yourself. I hope this build really works out for you well. If you have any questions about the build, about anything Last Epoch, whatever it might be, feel free to shout out in the comments. Ask me, whatever I think about whatever it is you're working on. I'm happy to help. I really do enjoy it. Also, I'm on Twitch 6 days a week. Love to see you there. I might not be playing Last Epoch at the time, but feel free to come in and ask a Last Epoch question if that's what you got, or just check out whatever I'm playing. Doesn't bother me either way. I'm really laid back about this stuff. Love to answer your questions, help out as much as I can. Love to talk with you guys. So yeah, thanks for watching and have a great time at Last Epoch.